talking about playing huge stadiums and things like that, do you have to get into a stage persona, imagine you're someone else to be able to be that big character on stage, or does it just come naturally?
I mean, stage is where I've always felt at home. I actually feel, you know, like a fish out of water just walking around the streets. So stage has always been my comfort zone, and you know, the bigger the better the crowd, you know, and yeah, I feel like super comfortable.
Yeah. Are you the same?
No, I'm the exact opposite. I'm a behind-the-scenes guy typically, you know, by trade, and I've relied heavily on DJ and Nikki to, you know, to kind of help me through that. I remember when we were doing our first tour, I'm such a perfectionist by nature, and there were several times where I get so frustrated with myself because, you know, my voice had cracked at this certain point, or I wasn't able to attack it exactly like I wanted. And I remember one time we were in LA and we just done a show, and it was a fantastic show, great crowd, huge crowd, and we got off stage and I was just kind of depressed. And DJ came over and he goes, "Dude, you got to take your producer's hat off. You know, you're the singer in a band now, and it's a different beast." And I'll never forget that conversation, because from that point in the tour on, I felt differently about it. But it's where it's completely natural for DJ. I mean, some of the most amazing performances I have ever seen are going to see Guns N' Roses and watch him. I'm standing there like how do I even know this guy? It's just so godly. And I really admire that, and I look up to that, and I try to draw on that in any way that I can when it comes to 6 a.m. performing.
I'm going to buy you coffee more often. See how nice he is to me when I buy him coffee?
What about him? What does he bring to your game?
I mean, you know, the one thing about James is when I first met him, and before I never knew he was a singer. For probably a year or two, he would call me down, and he was just this great producer. I would go down and he would go, "Hey man, I need a guitar part, can you come down?" And so for the longest time that became our friendship. I would come down, play on people's records for him, and whatever he needed, you know, we just clicked as friends. We became super close and good friends, and as it, you know, the Heroin Diaries, which became the Heroin Diaries, the very beginning process of that, me and Nikki teamed up as kind of songwriting partners out at Funny Farm, and we were just writing a bunch of tunes, and at that time, hey, let's find a singer to sing on all these, and the original idea was never to be a band, still isn't, and to, you know, but I remember when James sent over the demo, I mean, literally, I was like, holy shit, like and he still, to this day, is one of my favorite singers. He's just incredible, but I just never knew. And what was even more mind-blowing is, here's a guy that is so beyond humble, like such an incredible talent. I would have never known the guy sang. And it was jaw-dropping to hear his voice, and immediately I looked at Sixx, and we were like, what are we looking anywhere else outside of this for? And that's when he became the singer of what later on became 6 a.m.
It was funny because we were writing the record, and they'd kind of brought me in to produce it, or at least kind of get the whole thing together, and I had sung the demos, and our intention was always going to be that once the record was produced, we'd go find somebody to sing it, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point,
we were calling, like, Chester from Linkin Park was maybe going to do a song. I know we reached out to Steven Tyler. There was just different singers, and I remember he sent over a song that he had written called Dead Man's Ballet, which ended up on the record, and it just literally blew my mind. And I remember I felt, you know, I was so honored to like throw a cool guitar part of it, because it's such a great song, and yeah, so it was just a cool thing.
Was the chemistry good between the three of you when you got in the studio, started jamming together, like instantaneous?
Instantly. Yeah, and I've said this a lot, but it's really true. 6 a.m. to me is three very, very good friends that just happen to be set against the backdrop of music. Music is what brought us together, but it's certainly not what holds us together.
Yeah. Now, when did you decide that this was the right time for the next album? Is it just a case of schedules, or do you have to build up and like ideas? Or
about 2 months ago.
You know, that's a good question. We never really. We never really know when is the right time to schedule a 6 a.m. record, and that's the beauty of 6 a.m. is that we kind of call our own shots. You know, this record took us nearly 2 years to make, and most bands don't have that luxury, that freedom to kind of schedule it themselves. And that's why I love how 6 a.m. records turn out, because they're always inspired. They're not scheduled, they're inspired.
Yeah.
It must be horrible when people have to perform to when a record label says you have to have it ready by now. That must be quite restrictive. And
it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. It doesn't mean you can't make great art that way, because you know we've all made great records under a deadline. But it's a luxury for 6 a.m.
And we've been fortunate, you know, Alan Kovac and 10th Street, they've always just let us be artists. It doesn't feel like we're on a label. It doesn't feel like, you know, we've never had a deadline. We just make it, and when it's done, and we tell the label, when it's done, you'll get it, you know, because we won't sign off until we know it's right.
That's the way it should be, isn't it?
Yeah, in a perfect world, it should always be that way.
Now, final question, because I've got to let you go, but the artwork's very striking. I know your dad was a painter, I think,
yeah.
And you've got your creative agency, and you're very heavily involved with art. So, is the imagery really important to what you do as well?
It always has been, and I think that, yeah, having somebody like DJ, who's an incredible graphic artist, and Nikki, who's very, very visual, and then my upbringing being around, you know, visual artists, it's always been important to us how this band is imaged. The cover art for this record was a very, very specific decision that we made, and we're very happy with how it turned out. But also, I think that it translates into the music. Our music has always been very visual, and that's been important to all of us. Is that we wanted people to get an image in their heads when they hear the songs, and then what that does, that allows us to go someplace, you know, even different with the actual images, like the cover art, for instance, on this record. It gave us the freedom to really capture what modern vintage meant to us. And if you look at that album cover from a distance, it just looks like a woman and possibly an interesting kind of high-tech outfit. And the closer you get, you realize she's made up of all different car parts, vintage car parts. So it tells its own story, which is right in line with the music.
It captures everything.
It does, yeah.
But I've got to let you go, but thank you very much for talking to me, and best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.